tension in the Middle East has exploded into one of the most dangerous confrontations in modern history. In a bold and controversial move, Israel launched a direct attack on Iran, sending shockwaves across global politics, oil markets, and military alliances. But this wasn't a sudden decision. For years, a silent war has been brewing between these two powerful nations, fought through cyber attacks, proxy groups, and covert omelette. Now, that shadow conflict has erupted into open confrontation. Why did Israel strike now? Was it truly self-defense, or a calculated move to reshape the balance of power in the Middle East? And most importantly, what happens next? Let's break it down. The conflict between Israel and Iran did not start overnight. It is the result of decades of deep-rooted hostility, ideological differences, and strategic rivalry that has slowly escalated over time. At the center of this tension is a fundamental disagreement over existence and power. Since the 1979 Iranian Revolution, Iran has refused to recognize Israel as a legitimate state. Iranian leaders have consistently criticized Israel's policies and supported groups that oppose it. On the other hand, Israel views Iran as its most dangerous enemy in the region. This rivalry is not just political, it is military, ideological, and strategic. Iran has spent years expanding its influence across the Middle East. Through what experts call a proxy network, Iran supports armed groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. These groups have engaged in multiple confrontations with Israel, making Iran a constant indirect threat. Israel, however, has not remained passive. Over the years, Israel has carried out covert operations targeting Iranian interests. These include cyber attacks, assassinations of nuclear scientists, and airstrikes on Iranian positions in countries like Syria. While these actions were rarely officially acknowledged, they formed part of a shadow war between the two nations. But the biggest issue, the one that pushed tensions to the edge, is Iran's nuclear program. Israel believes that Iran is working toward developing nuclear weapons. Iran insists that its nuclear activities are for peaceful purposes, such as energy production. However, Israel sees this as a direct existential threat. Why? Because a nuclear-armed Iran would dramatically shift the balance of power in the Middle East. Israel, a small nation geographically, fears that even a single nuclear weapon in the hands of a hostile government could be catastrophic. This fear has shaped Israel's military doctrine for decades: never allow an enemy to gain nuclear capability. We've seen this before. Israel previously struck nuclear facilities in Iraq and Syria to prevent them from developing such weapons. So, when intelligence suggested that Iran was getting closer to nuclear capability, alarms were raised at the highest levels of Israeli leadership. At the same time, diplomatic efforts were failing. Talks between Iran and global powers over nuclear restrictions had broken down. Agreements meant to limit Iran's nuclear activities were either weakened or abandoned. This created a dangerous vacuum, one where mistrust grew and military options became more likely. Inside Israel, pressure was mounting on leaders to act decisively. Many believed that waiting longer would only make Iran stronger and harder to stop. Meanwhile, Iran continued to expand its missile program. Reports indicated that Iran possessed long-range missiles capable of reaching Israeli territory. Combined with its nuclear ambitions, this created a scenario that Israel considered unacceptable. So, by early 2026, the stage was set. Years of hostility, failed diplomacy, growing military capabilities. All of these factors combined into a ticking time bomb, one that was about to explode. And then, it did. When Israel finally launched its attack on Iran, it was not a random act. It was a carefully planned military operation designed to achieve multiple objectives at once. The strike reportedly targeted key strategic locations inside Iran. These included military bases, missile facilities, and sites believed to be connected to Iran's nuclear program. There were also reports of attacks on critical energy infrastructure, including parts of Iran's massive gas fields. This was significant. By targeting energy infrastructure, Israel was not just aiming at Iran's military strength, it was also hitting its economic backbone. Iran's oil and gas sector is one of its most important sources of revenue. Damaging it sends a powerful message and weakens the country's ability to sustain long-term conflict. The operation itself demonstrated a high level of military sophistication. Israel is known for its advanced air force and intelligence capabilities. The use of precision strikes suggests that the operation relied heavily on detailed intelligence, possibly gathered over years. Some analysts believe cyber warfare and electronic disruption may also have played a role in disabling Iranian defenses. But beyond the military tactics, the message was clear. Israel was willing to act directly, not through proxies, not in secret, but openly. This marked a major shift. For years, the conflict between Israel and Iran had remained largely indirect. But this attack brought it into the open, increasing the risk of full-scale war. And Iran did not stay silent. Following the attack, Iranian officials issued strong warnings, promising retaliation. Statements from Tehran indicated that Iran would respond with no restraint if further aggression continued. Soon after, reports emerged of missile launches and retaliatory actions targeting Israeli interests. The situation escalated rapidly. Global leaders began to react. Some countries called for restraint, while others expressed concern about the potential for a wider regional war. The Middle East is already a volatile region, and a direct conflict between two powerful nations like Israel and Iran could have far-reaching consequences. One of the immediate impacts was on global energy markets. Oil prices began to rise as fears grew that the conflict could disrupt supply from the region. The Middle East plays a critical role in global energy production, and any instability can send shockwaves through the global economy. Airspace restrictions were also reported in parts of the region, affecting international travel and trade routes. For ordinary people, the impact was immediate and real. In Israel, citizens prepared for potential retaliation, with air defense systems on high alert. In Iran, there were concerns about further strikes and the possibility of prolonged conflict. What made this situation even more dangerous was the involvement of other players. Iran's allies in the region, including armed groups, could join the fight. At the same time, Israel has strong support from allies like the United States. This creates a complex web of alliances that could turn a bilateral conflict into a broader regional war. So, what started as a targeted strike quickly became something much bigger, a flashpoint with the potential to reshape the entire Middle East. The big question now is, what happens next? The Israel-Iran conflict has entered a critical phase, and the next steps could determine whether this remains a limited confrontation or escalates into a full-scale war. There are several possible scenarios. The first is controlled escalation. In this scenario, both Israel and Iran continue to exchange limited strikes but avoid actions that could trigger all-out war. This kind of back and forth is not uncommon in international conflicts. Each side tries to assert strength while avoiding catastrophic consequences. However, this is a risky path. All it takes is one miscalculation, one strike that causes significant casualties or hits a highly sensitive target, to push the conflict beyond control. The second scenario is full-scale war. If tensions continue to rise, the conflict could expand rapidly. Iran could use its missile capabilities to launch large-scale attacks on Israeli cities. Israel, in response, could intensify its strikes deep Dakhil Iran. This would likely draw in other countries. Allies on both sides could become involved, turning the conflict into a regional war. This would have devastating consequences, not just for the Middle East, but for the entire world. Global trade routes could be disrupted. Oil prices could skyrocket. Millions of people could be affected. The third scenario is diplomatic intervention. Despite the intensity of the situation, there is still a chance for diplomacy. International organizations and powerful nations could step in to de-escalate tensions. Negotiations, ceasefires, and new agreements could help prevent further violence. But this will not be easy. Trust between Israel and Iran is extremely low. Years of hostility and recent events have made compromise difficult. Any diplomatic solution would require significant concessions from both sides. And then there's the internal dimension. Both countries are dealing with domestic pressures. Leaders must balance international strategy with public opinion at home. In times of conflict, national unity often increases, but so does pressure to appear strong and decisive. This can make de-escalation politically challenging. For Israel, the priority remains security. The government has made it clear that it will not tolerate what it sees as existential threats. For Iran, Retaliation is not just a military response, it is also about maintaining credibility and deterrence. So, we are left at a crossroads. The decisions made in the coming days and weeks will shape the future of the region. Will leaders choose restraint, or will they push forward into deeper conflict? One thing is certain. The world is watching. And the outcome of this confrontation will have lasting consequences for global peace, security, and stability.